Well, good evening, everyone. How the hell are you?
Hey,
Joined here
everybody.
tonight, obviously, with the lovely and gracious E Train. Pleased to be with you tonight. Hope everyone is having a good weekend. Hope all your favorite teams are winning and winning large.
I know that
And
I said on the community page that Clay was probably not going to be here at the beginning. Excuse me, but he is.
I made
Bless
it
him. You
barely,
did
but
make
I
it.
made it. Yeah, I have
Yes.
a colleague who is getting married. Uh, Young guy. He and his bride to be don't look like they're old enough to be married, but um, it's happening, and they're just a cute couple. He's just a really good guy, just really good guy, and she looks like she's a doll as well. So
Oh,
cute
good.
spirit and just sweet spirit. So very happy for him. And tonight was just a little department celebration for him. So an interesting week, obviously. Um, we've got I guess the biggest news. It's probably the war in Israel that
Yeah.
has just recently been launched. Um, Hamas, backed by Iran, has launched about 5,000 missiles so far at Israel. And Iran, that's the country that Biden just gave or approved $6 billion in cash. And I just got to think that Iran is trying to provoke U.S. involvement. So if you think about it, the U.S. government is kind of technically bankrupt, uh, and has just basically received a formal invitation to engage in another war. I mean, is that great timing or what? We're
I mean, the
already
whole. Go ahead.
we're already printing trillions to pay our debt with you know with inflation, trying to get inflation under control. And another war only encourages more spending, more printing, and more inflation,
Hey, Clay.
and a declining U.S. economy.
Hey, Clay.
Yes,
Who
ma'am.
is buying U.S. debt right now?
Well, hold on a second. Let's just finish this thought.
Okay.
Um, if Iran actually becomes more involved, such as closing the Strait of Hormuz,
Mm-hmm.
oil prices will explode and possibly usher in another energy crisis without the U.S. engaging in war. The other option would be for the U.S. to confront Iran directly, keep the Hormuz open. Um,
Well, there is a rumor on the internet, at least from the internal Biden sources, that say that three of the people that he had um, on the board to handle Iran were actually Iranians who were connected with the Iran government.
uh, three of the people he had on I don't understand.
The three of the people that were handling the Iran situation, whatever, I don't know what board or whatever that is. I'd have to go back and
Yeah.
look at what I've saw. Three of them were Iranians that worked for the Iran government.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that, so I can't really comment. I do know that the Biden administration has drained the Strategic Petroleum Reserve down
Mhm.
to about 17 days of inventory. Uh, Much of that, honestly, we probably can't access without risking the caverns collapsing. So, all of this in short, Iran can greatly increase the pain for the U.S. Um, hey, Carrie Berry's mom, good to see you. Sky
And Sky
Ricky,
Ricky said awful.
good to see you
Hey,
as
Carrie
well.
Berry's mom.
Now, I'm going to take this and just do a little possible projection.
Oh, Brentwood.
Hey,
Hey,
Brentwood,
girl.
how you
Here we go.
doing?
Dinner, but a bit. Do you want me to go ahead and do the Ukraine, why Russia even invaded Ukraine real quick?
Yeah, if you want to.
Okay. So, guys, this is something that I feel like no one is talking about. It's kind of the big elephant in the room. Clay and I had discussed this a little bit earlier, um, actually in the month. And I was like, I'm not hearing anybody talk about this. So we're going to present here and share screen. Sorry, I'm still new at this.
We're letting the rookie get a little experience here.
I know, right? So the NATO expansion, what Gorbachev was told, okay, in 1990, okay, declassified documents show security assurances against NATO expansion to Soviet leaders from Baker, Bush, Genscher, Kohl, Gates, Mitterrand, Thatcher, Hurd, Major, and Warner. Slavic Studies panel addresses who promised what to whom on NATO expansion. Well, this was released in 2017. U.S. Secretary of State James Baker's famous not 1 inch eastward assurance about NATO expansion in his meeting with Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev on February 9th, 1990 was part of a cascade of assurances about Soviet security given by Western leaders to Gorbachev and other Soviet officials throughout the process of German unification in 1990 on into 1991. According to declassified Soviet, German, British, and French documents posted today, this was on December 12th of 2017, by the National Security Archive at George Washington University. So apparently, I can put the link to this in the description. Multiple national leaders were considering and rejecting Central and Eastern European membership into NATO as of early 1990 and through 1991. That discussions of NATO in the context of German unification and negotiations in 1990 were not all nearly limited to the status of East German territory, and that subsequent Soviet and Russian compliance about being misled about NATO expansion were founded in written contemporaneous memcons and telcons at the highest levels. The problem is that Baker did promise not 1 inch. NATO would not move 1 inch closer to Russia. Well, here's the map. All of the nice, what I would say, Carolina blue, because, I have to redo it, don't I? Hang on. Sorry. Still getting used to this. Sorry. Start screen. Nope. So a lot of these were Russian controlled still, and were not their own countries. However, this is NATO. All this Carolina blue is where NATO moved. So Belarus and Ukraine are the last
showing.
borders. It's not?
No.
Okie dokie.
Look at you falling in love with
I see it.
StreamYard's sharing screen issue.
I see it on here. Is it?
Welcome
I
to
see
the
it
club.
on YouTube too. I think you're just not seeing it.
Oh, I see it now. It's up now.
Thank you. All right. So the Carolina blue, which I call it right out here, some of them were Russian controlled. Some of them became their own countries, whichever, but Belarus and Ukraine are the last two. So Ukraine has the largest border bordering Russia. So we are allowing Ukraine into NATO. Well, as Putin said, we have broken the rules with all of these other countries. For so many years, they are not taking it anymore. No, we will not move 1 more inch east to Russia. Or is it west? Help me out. East. Okay. So with taking all this, all is Belarus, and that's just a tiny portion. So that means that we have most of the border, all right, with NATO. So if Russia does anything at all, we got them. They said no. We promised. They said no. We've moved too far. I get why Russia is invading Ukraine, because of the NATO alliance that we have offered them. So much money is going into Ukraine, and we are paying over 500,000 teachers, professors. We are paying every single one of their emergency personnel, police, fire, EMS, everything, not just weapons. Yes, Clay?
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the point is that, Russia was concerned about having NATO own its borders, directly own
Mhm.
its borders with armies across from it that it considers, at least a modest threat. And initially the promise was is that NATO would not expand eastward. Well, broken that in several circumstances, and
Yeah, quite a
there
few.
was a move by the administration to approve Ukraine into NATO. And, Russia saw that as clear provocation. In addition, in the
Mhm.
Donbass and Crimea regions, those are largely Russian speaking areas, and they and the Ukrainians don't get along.
No.
Ukraine has actually used some cities in the Donbass for practice, artillery practice. They've been absolutely brutal in some ways to these people. So there's a number of provocations, not trying to justify the war, just looking at it from both sides.
Yeah, and
There's
I think that NATO I'm look, I know you're gonna say, like, I am a Russian whatever, I'm not, but I get where we made a promise, we didn't keep it, and then we, accept Ukraine into NATO and give them $223 million a day, just the United States, not including everybody else, to keep their economy going, and our own is failing. And I think that Russia is not necessarily at war with Ukraine. It's at war with NATO. That's why they did this. They're like, you promised, and we're going to attack Ukraine because this is what you're doing. And I get that. I understand that side of things. Not that it's right, not that it's good, but it's valid
yeah,
because we
we
had a
didn't
promise we did not keep.
we didn't want Russia having military or missiles
Mhm.
in Cuba. You can kind of understand, respecting people's borders in that sense. And it's not a simple question. Like Carrie Berry's mom, shouldn't Ukraine decide their own fate? And then Russia
Yeah, but
has
should we
abused
pay
the
for it?
Ukrainian people for 100 years. Uh, Part of it is this section, this easternmost section of Ukraine. The majority of people actually want to be with Russia.
Yeah.
They don't want to be with Ukraine. But to me the real problem is there's never a perfect political solution, but we do know hundreds of thousands of people are dying, starving. War is only, it seems like sometimes NATO, the US is trying to do what it can to provoke Russia even more. And I'm just not a fan of starting World War III. But to me, the
Yeah,
main goal here is people need to understand both sides. You will never come to a peace or an understanding if you don't understand your enemy. And
exactly.
that goes back to Sun Tzu, know thy enemy.
Mhm.
So regardless of where you stand on the Ukrainian war, the Minsk Accords, which Ukraine had agreed to, and there was going to be peace, the administration pushed Zelensky to reject that. It seemingly wanted conflict. So I think there's more of a haze, a gray area surrounding this war than what a lot of us would imagine or want to imagine.
Can I
And
give an analogy here?
I think that the truth just needs to come out.
Can I give an analogy here?
Sure.
Let's say you live in the suburbs somewhere, don't care where, doesn't matter. Um, and I promised you that I would never, ever, ever put ex convicts, um, who murdered people, who were drug dealers, whatever, into your neighborhood. Okay. And then 10 years later, I did exactly what I told you I wouldn't do. Would you be angry that I broke my promise?
Well,
That
I
your
mean,
children were
a
now in
promise is
danger?
a promise. I don't know that NATO is exactly a bunch of murderers or
No,
felons
I'm
or
not
whatever,
saying they
but
are, but that's how Russia sees it. Like you are a threat to
fair
their
enough.
country, their government, correct?
Yeah, fair enough.
So, I mean, that's kind of how Russia is seeing it. And I know y'all don't agree with me. You can be mad at me all you want to, but I try to see both sides of every conflict so that hopefully someone can find a middle ground. Because if you're just yelling at the other side about what they're doing wrong on each side, nothing ever gets accomplished.
Yeah, to me, the big concern is war is breaking out all over. We have
Yeah, we're in Haiti
spent
now.
a ton of money we don't have.
Hmm.
We have given away munitions. In fact, the Defense Department is saying it is so low on some munitions it can't even do training.
Oh,
So
but
if we
Biden was
get
told
involved,
we can no longer afford
in
to
another
send more.
war, if we can if we get involved in another war, we'll be running out of munitions within a week and a half. All that means is higher casualties for us, possibly losing battles or wars that could otherwise be won. I
And
have a problem with that.
it's not just military, it is the everyday lives of citizens here in America. We cannot afford as a country to put any more money. We don't have any more.
Well,
And
understand, there's war in Ukraine. War is now breaking out in Israel. China is getting more militant with Taiwan.
we're
There's a
going to
good
Haiti as
chance that
well.
war, yeah, we're not in Haiti. I think that's just the UN. There's a good chance that a major conflict breaks out within a year on Taiwan. It's almost like there's a plan to destabilize the country. I mean, so many things are falling in place now that hurt the U.S. economically and militarily, strategically. Is it just a coincidence that it's all folding in together? And I mean, there's other risk. Think about, for example, we're going to talk about it a little bit later with particulars to the U.S., but think of all the Middle East from Syria and all Middle East and African immigrants that have fled to Europe and the U.S. Just imagine, and they're all males. It's funny, they never bring their families or wives with them. But a lot of these will support Hamas or Hezbollah. And if the Western countries start supporting Israel, will these migrants start rioting or attacking or doing terrorist attacks in response to that country's support for Israel? It just gets messier and messier and messier. A new front for the U.S. is a boon. A new war front for the U.S. is a boon to Russia and China. Not to mention if China moves on Taiwan. We just simply can't afford it all.
And as we keep supporting Ukraine, we are pushing China and Russia closer together. And we can't afford that as a country, as a people, as anything.
Yeah, the goal of foreign policy should not be to strengthen our enemies and to unite them. And that's what we've been doing. So, I just see this, I've said repeatedly that chaos is growing. And I just see this as a, further extension of that. Chaos and risk is growing. This war in Israel could be a major, what do you call it? Sticky wicket, a major thorn in our side, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's just got a lot of risk for the middle class, poor, for the military, for the economy at large, for our relationships internationally. So I don't have a perfect crystal ball. I can't guarantee exactly what's going to happen in the future. But it deserves some thought.
Well, it's like I've with all the stuff going on, even during the Cold War, I was asking my grandfather when I was there. But I asked him, I said, did you ever think? I said, I know that, every generation before thinks the next one is gonna like screw things up. I said, did you ever think that or were afraid that this country would collapse? And I may not share Clay's view on this, but I am afraid it will because of all of the things that we've gotten ourselves into. And he's like, no, never felt that way. Never felt. And I was telling everything going on. I know I said it last time, but he was just like, that's crazy. What is going on in the world? And I was like, Pop, you stay ignorant because that is just the best way to be.
Carson, glad to have you. Maybe late,
Hey,
but I'm a
Carson.
rail out of place. Sometimes
I know you will derail us, no doubt. Mm-hmm. Well, what do you have to share about SBF?
A few other things first.
Okay.
Ellen's always trying to jump ahead here.
No, I'm just trying to keep you on
keep
track.
her in order. I'm always on track.
Mm-hmm.
Just saw today, in terms of things going on in the market, the economy at large, just saw today where chicken prices hit a record high, average of $1.96 a pound.
Buck, buck, buck.
Both chicken and beef production are down as producers cut back. For example, Tyson is closing 6 processing facilities. So don't expect chicken to become cheaper anytime soon. Most chicken and egg producers are cutting their flocks by about 3%. So that will end up taking a toll. Also saw where mortgages hit 7.93%. They will pass 8% this week. To give you some perspective, that's up from about 2.6% in January of 21. Now imagine a $400,000 house 2 years ago cost $604,000 total, principal and interest. Nowadays, that same house would cost over $1 million.
Yeah.
What do you say? Well, that was quick. No. And some people get all excited, but yeah, all together too quick.
I got to handle dogs real fast.
Go handle dogs. A lot of the talking heads kind of would have you think that the fight against inflation is over, but inflation still continues. It doesn't continue as fast as it was, but it's still increasing. Saw another survey that showed 72% of Americans don't feel financially secure, mostly due to inflation. 2/3 of retirees say high prices have forced them to put off dental care, for example. Bridges, and I'm not talking about just a checkup. I'm talking bridges, dentures, implants. They have some serious structural issue that they can't afford to get taken care of.
My grandfather is one.
1/3 have had to postpone filling prescriptions or getting health care. 8 out of 10 say housing is costing them more. And 67% of workers say inflation is outpacing their wage gains. I'm actually surprised it's that low because normally wage increases follow inflation. Even if you have a job where you get an automatic cost of living increase, it's usually a year later or months later after the CPI is in for the year. And so it's a lag.
Clay, think about that. Think about the companies that we talked about not that long ago about if they are renting a building and or leasing, or they have a mortgage on a building that they are using. I mean, their interest rate is going up, and they can't afford to increase pay to their employees.
Yeah. It's just people are hurting, and inflation is starting to tick up again. So we are not out of this fight. We are not done with it. Everybody keeps hoping it's over, but keep in mind, once inflation passes 5%, normally it takes 4 to 5 years to get it back down to 2. Historically.
I want to touch on one thing before we move on too far. That shouldn't Ukraine decide decide their own fate? Yeah, they should, but they shouldn't bring the whole world into it, in my opinion. And we shouldn't sacrifice our own country and our own borders in order to save their economy and their borders. Just my opinion. Love you to death. You know that, Carrie Berry's mom, but I think it's something to think about.
Yeah, and like we talked about on the eastern border with Russia, the views of the population there towards the Ukrainians viewed towards the Russian and the Slavics are not highly complementary. There's some issues and conflicts there. Like I say, I don't have a perfect solution that'll make everybody happy. My concern really is the U.S. And where is all this leading? Why is all this starting to happen? Why is it, the chaos trending, accelerating, that kind of thing? So my goal is to just help people expand their horizon in terms of information. Want to serve as a source of information of stuff that you don't hear talked about in the daily news or daily reports, and give you information to help you make better decisions in your best interest. Now, we'll share thoughts and opinions on it, sometimes just for entertainment value. But the idea is to try to share with you thoughts on things going on in the world that you need to be aware of.
Yeah, and I think, just like everybody, I used to help out a lot of recovering addicts, and one of the things that you're supposed to do is you get your side of the street clean first before you go help somebody else. And I think the U.S. has failed to do that. But
yeah, we've got so many problems here at home.
Yeah.
And we're certainly not making progress on them. My opinion. That's concerning. Speaking of, things going on in the future as far as the economy, saw where bank deposits rose last week by $40 billion. Okay, this little graph is just showing you really what I'm focusing on is this little uptick here.
I can't
remember
when
when SVB was crashing and all in March, okay, you get this severe drop, and it's been kind of chopping water. Well, this was kind of a nice increase this week, but bank cash and the amount of cash actually that a bank is holding actually increased. You can't really see it too well here, but it increased $50 billion. So their cash increased more than just their increase in deposits.
Why is that?
Well, it tells you that banks are not making loans. They are not lending their money out. They're getting repaid loans. They're not relending it. So their cash is increasing. And this is due, to higher lending standards and the price of credit. You get the slow roll off of low interest rate assets continuing. So you have loans maturing, interest being paid. They're keeping in cash. And keep in mind that these banks have a March 24 deadline for the Fed's bank lending program that they use to cover their deposits. Remember, they also owe 6%. So my thinking here is that they're increasing cash in anticipation of having to pay off these loans in March. So they're not going to ease credit standards anytime soon. They're not going to be making loans anytime soon. So you're going to continue to see tighter and tighter credit. And this obviously hits a ton of different industries. Also saw where consumer credit dropped in August, most since May of 2020. But if you focus in on it, the fall was due to non-revolving credit as banks tighten lending standards. So they get loans paid off. They're not issuing new loans. Further evidence. They don't want to make loans.
Is this because of the small banks most of all do the commercial lending?
Well, that could be a part of it. We don't have a good breakdown down on what banks in any sector, if this is impacting, but this is just aggregate information.
Mm-hmm.
And, with the amount of cash you see banks increasing, they're really not making any loans.
Right.
Compared to the inflow of deposits. So why are they hoarding it so much? Well, that March deadline for repaying these loans that the banks have from the Federal Reserve
right
sticks out in my mind.
The 1.7 trillion.
Yeah. And so, but you see consumer, the revolving credit, the difference between non-revolving is a loan for like a car or a house. Straight loan, you make payments, it's reduced, etc. It doesn't keep increasing. The revolving credit is like a credit card. So you pay it off a little bit, you put more on the credit card. You pay it off, it revolves, as it's referred to. So we see non-revolving credit decline, but revolving credit cards is still increasing, even though the variable interest rate on it is soaring. The rates on most cards now are at 30%. So this, to me, points to what I would refer to as a death spiral.
Yikes.
Where interest charge on the cards starts exceeding the payment the individuals can actually afford. Rates have moved so fast, not even the Fed has enough income to pay its interest cost. It's in the red. It's paying more interest than what it receives. Now, of course, the Fed has printers. Individuals don't. But the increases in revolving credit, the increase in rates, how much farther can it go till individuals are paying more or owe more in interest than what they're able to pay each month? That's when things get really ugly. I don't know exactly when that point is coming, but it's approaching. I don't have perfect enough information to point to a date, but things aren't looking good. Second biggest news of the week was the latest payroll report. And the payrolls, everybody, in the media and all got all excited about it. If you were watching Thursday morning, payrolls jumped 336,000, which on the face of it would indicate a vibrant economy. And those were actually words I heard used on the media: a vibrant economy, a resilient economy. Well, devil's always in the details. With the payrolls number, there were two other numbers released that were of general interest. The unemployment rate stayed unchanged, even though there was apparently a ton of people getting jobs.
Well, that's. Can I say something about that real quick?
Wait, go ahead. Just say
I
it.
was told there were 320,000 new jobs created. Now, someone else I was listening to was saying that there are 320,000 more people getting second jobs to pay for their mortgages and credit cards, etc.
Well, we're
What is your
getting to that.
opinion? Okay,
We're getting
sorry.
to that.
Did I jump ahead a little bit?
Maybe.
Sorry.
The two other numbers were unemployment 3.8%, and then those not in the labor force are still 5 million more than pre-pandemic. And those people not in the labor force are people who have given up looking for a job, who can't find a job. And so they are thrown out of the labor force. They're thrown out of the calculation for unemployment. If they were still in the labor force, the unemployment rate would be about 6.5% to 7%. The idea is that if everybody got laid off, everybody got fired, and they couldn't find a job, and so they give up looking, the unemployment rate would be 0, which is nonsensical. But that's how we calculate unemployment. People who can't find jobs are thrown out of the calculation. So the payrolls job that Ellen was alluding to, which many people swooned over, it was a 6 sigma deviation away from expectations. So
Six
all the big
Sigma?
banks have estimates of what they think it will be. 170,000 was the consensus. Well, it came in at 336,000. So that is 6 standard deviations, or 6 sigma, away from the average, from the expected. Now, if I converted that into a probability function, it translates into about a 1.5 times out of a billion chance of randomly occurring. So when you see that kind of literally 1, 2 in a billion chance of the real number being that far off from the expected number, you might want to hesitate on the enthusiasm.
Wait, so we could win the lottery?
We could win the lottery with those kind of odds. And that's only the first warning. Now, Ellen was talking about the jobs added. Well, where did they come from? Well, if we get into the numbers, and I have got the report, if anybody, cares to see it or wants to get into the numbers, whoops. If I go down through,
bigger.
well, the idea is just there's plenty of numbers for you to chew through. Okay. And I've chewed through them. If we look at the jobs where they come from, 78% came from the private sector and 22% came from government jobs, increase in government jobs, which are paid for by those people in the private sector. Now,
you mean the taxpayers?
The taxpayers. What kind of jobs were added? The numbers show that there were fewer full-time jobs, down by 22,000.
Mostly
That's
part-time.
full-time jobs lost, while part-time jobs gained 151,000. So full-time jobs down 22,000, part-time up 151,000. Key point, this is not a new trend.
No.
Over the past 3 months, we've seen an increase in 1.2 million jobs, part-time jobs, while full-time jobs have dropped 700,000. I'm sorry, 700,000. Part-time up 1.2 million, full-time down 700,000. And people in the media celebrate. They think this is good news. Hey, Melissa.
Are you actually in Venice? Because we'll see. I like Venice. Been there a few times. And hey, Mom and Green Bean.
Give Green Bean a hug for us.
And big kisses.
Will seasonal jobs be counted? Yes, these seasonal jobs are counted. And they're probably almost all in the part-time category. So this trend isn't a new trend.
And it's just so misleading to me. Like, it's
it
just
is
not what.
And if it's Six Sigma off and it's been
Mhm.
consistently off, you have to wonder if it's intentional. Or is the system that bad? Either way, it's not a good look for the BLS.
But who is producing these numbers?
The BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics.
But why is that a thing? Like, why are they cheating on the numbers, so to speak?
Well, it makes it gives the administration good headlines. 10 minutes after the release, Biden was out talking about we created 336,000 jobs this month. So why? It's politics. Now,
I am really sick of politics all around.
There's more devils in the details.
I'm sure.
If you compare the BLS's report with ADP, ADP is a private payroll company, and it releases data every month based on its results for the month.
Do you have those?
They showed a gain of 87,000 jobs for the month. 87 versus 336.
Yeah.
That's a subtle difference. Not only that, the BLS does 2 surveys where it gets jobs data from. It does what's called the establishment. It surveys companies. Then it surveys households. So the 2 surveys, households and establishments. Now, establishments will report, for example, a part-time job.
Okay.
Which the BLS counts as a job added.
Mm-hmm.
In the payrolls report, the household survey reports the number of people in the family, in the household, who work. So they can have 2 or 3 jobs. They're only counted as one person with a job.
Okay.
If one of the people in the household gets a job, then that's a gain. So the household survey is reporting 86,000 new people went to work.
Okay, so these are not so if they had multiple jobs, they don't count as a new job.
In the household. Yeah,
Okay,
if
so
you're
you have
working
4
full-time, if you're working
like-
full-time and you get a part-time job, in
Yeah.
the household survey, that does not count as a new job.
Okay.
But the
What if you
company
had-
you hired, the company who hired you
does count it as a new job.
Yes.
Got it.
So
Okay.
there's a difference in the establishment survey and the household survey. It's important to understand that difference when you're looking at the difference in numbers.
So let's say that you had 4 people. I'm just going to go kind of crazy with this. Let's say you have 2 parents and 2 teenagers. Okay. And let's say the parents had a full-time job, 1 each. Okay. And then the teenagers had each a part-time job. Okay. I'm just going through a crazy scenario. So each of the teenagers got an extra part-time job. And then mom and dad got an extra part-time job. How would that funnel out?
If it was in the household, it would be 0.
No extra.
Because they all had a job prior.
But the workforce, which is where
the establishment,
putting these numbers, the establishment would say there are 4 extra jobs.
4 extra jobs
created.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
So another troubling aspect was that we saw wage growth slow. if we look here, you've got two different wage calculations. The red line is hourly earnings. The blue line is weekly earnings, and they are what we call real earnings. So you take the percentage growth and subtract inflation. So if the line is positive, is up, well, here's zero. So as you can tell, we've had sustained negative real growth going back to 21. This is January of 2021.
Is it?
Do what?
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm reading it right here.
It's this way. All right. Okay. I was like,
yeah. It's a little, I know it's a little hard to see online, but this first entry is January of 2021. And since then, you see a constant trend of negative. All of this is minus 1%, -2, -3, down to -6.
And this is like, you can't see what okay. The first little, it goes down, right? And the first peak here on the red line is
0921.
Okay, and then the next tiny peak
is probably 1122.
Okay. I think it's 0122. And what is
these are months.
Yeah, I know. I think it's 01.
Yeah, the second
22.
peak. Yeah, you're right. 01. So it'd be probably 02, February of 02.
And this major dip?
No, this is around 1122. So this is just several months. All of these are dips. All of these are negative results. Some of the negative results are greater than others.
But we still aren't where we were in
no.
121.
No. Even if you've gotten an increase, it has probably not kept up with inflation. So, for example, this last month, wage growth was up 2% or 2.4% a year. But the annual inflation rate is probably around 4%. So you had a negative growth again. So in real terms, inflation adjusted terms, purchasing power declined. You can purchase less with your money this month than you could last month. Now, this kind of information dovetails with the decline in full-time jobs and the increase in part-time jobs. If you're looking for further confirmation of the numbers, people need the extra jobs to compensate for inflation. Their credit cards are maxing out. Plus student loans are starting up this month.
That's true. Even though he's trying to get that, I think Biden's trying to get that pushed back.
Yeah, but so keep in mind, over the last 3 months, we've lost 700,000 full-time jobs, gained 1.2 million part-time jobs. That's not a good trend and almost never, ever happens outside of a recession.
True. All right, I'm going to try something. If you lose me, I apologize. I'm trying to do the things.
No problem.
Okay.
Now, one last aspect is who took the jobs. According to the BLS, most of the jobs are going to foreign-born workers. Native-born workers are pretty much stagnant. They have never recovered from the crash. So here you can see this blue line. This blue line would be foreign-born workers. The red line is native-born workers. So basically, immigrants are the ones being hired, probably because they work for less.
Or there are a ton more of them in the country?
Don't know exactly. This report doesn't give us details on that. Okay. But I thought it was just interesting that if you go back to 10 or 11, there's a fair amount of semblance in the growth. And then, in I don't know, somewhere around 12, 13, the line starts changing, the slope of the line, and more jobs go to immigrants.
Where is this
Whereas
big
native
dip?
born workers have pretty much stagnated. The dip is COVID, the
Gotcha.
lockdowns.
So why did the blue is immigrant, right?
Right.
Why did it go up so much more than native?
Well, that's the $1 million question.
Oh, okay.
Don't have absolute evidence why. Now, all of this is basically due to seasonal. Let me back that up. When I was talking about the numbers in the payroll, the BLS will take the data they actually receive and they'll adjust it. They'll do what they call seasonal adjustments to try
There's
to
a
take
reason for
out.
that. Hang on. Let me put a little caveat in there. Farm workers or farmers are allowed to bring in seasonal workers from other countries for the season just to work, and they actually get a credit. The company that brings them in, I don't know if you know this, gets a credit for bringing them in, allowing them to work at a lower wage. But they have to be seasonal only a few months out of the year. I can't remember what the actual thing is called that makes that happen. But I looked into it for a company that I worked for just to have some part-time labor.
Yeah, that's a different. That's not what I'm talking about.
I know it's not, but that is part of the seasonal.
No,
No? Okay.
nope. The BLS will just take common reoccurring seasonality, like purchasing toys greatly increases in October, November, December. That's a seasonal trend.
Mhm.
So they try to take that and smooth it out. Kind of black block stuff. But if you're looking just at the raw numbers, the unadjusted jobs data, some of the magic in the miracle of job growth, the unadjusted numbers expose the seasonal adjustments. For example, remember I talked about at the beginning, those not in the labor force
Mhm.
remain unchanged.
Mhm.
The actual number came in 550,000 higher. The government jobs, instead of increasing 22,000, increased 984,000. The private non-farm jobs, instead of falling, what was the number? Instead of falling about 20,000, 22,000, they fell 440,000.
Fair point.
So that's the difference between the unadjusted, the actual survey data, and the numbers published by the BLS based on what they call seasonal adjustments. So I thought that was quite the difference.
Mhm. Huge. At
Anybody have
Brentwood,
any questions on any of that?
terrifying stats. Yes, they are. It's extremely
Can't
terrifying.
hear you. You're not talking into your mic.
Oh, I think I turned it off.
No, you're not. You
No, I
just
didn't.
were.
Okay.
Just were
No,
away from
Brentwood
your
says
mic.
terrifying stats. They are terrifying. It is.
It's hopefully eye-opening in some ways. Again, give you a little bit better information as to what's actually going on versus what's in the headlines of the news. Now
And I have a
Should,
problem with that on both sides. I don't think that anyone is being honest about anything going on. Whether I don't care which aisle you're on or what political party that you follow or subscribe to.
there's a
But
lot of bullshitty going on.
mm-hmm. Hey,
Will not argue
Brentwood.
that. No, sir, but I'm going to thank my bosses for keeping me employed. There's
Yeah,
something to be said for that.
absolutely.
I remember when I graduated from the PhD program, it was in actually when I was on the job market, it was 07. And so I had an offer from a Wall Street firm, and it was, I don't know, 2 or 3 times the money. But I decided to go to work in academia because that's what I wanted to do. I've gotten to where I, enjoyed my free time. But I also wanted the stability, and I didn't want to work the 70, 80 hours that I would have to if I returned to the street. It's like, I'm getting too old for that kind of crap. That's a young man's game. So, and the funny thing is, took the job, started, well, the subprime crisis hit, and all the people who were hired previously were the first ones laid off. So I'm like, yeah, there's something to be said for, some stability. All right, 2 choices. I can either start talking about immigration or Sam. Does E-Train have a preference?
I want to know if y'all are like done with Sam, because I know a lot of y'all follow Rob, or if I don't know, y'all SBF. Okay, Brentwood says SBF. Go for it. Sam. Everybody wants Sam.
Sam. Well, I actually have looked at some of the major channels, and it doesn't seem like Sam's getting a whole lot of attention. But I think the start of the trial, the whole background is kind of interesting.
We've done
Obviously,
all that though.
yeah, obviously the trial began this week, and the prosecution is trying to prove that he knowingly committed fraud or stole from customers. That almost sounds funny knowing what we know. Other than just willy-nilly taking billions from customer accounts to fund his lavish lifestyle, buy homes for his family, I'm not sure what evidence the government has on him, but we'll see. Also, the prosecution's going to bring every other FTX executive to testify against Sam, including his
Ellison.
ex, including Caroline Ellison, his ex. And you got to know when an ex is testifying against you, it's going to be good. Yeah.
You're so screwed.
You're so screwed. Also, his computer guy, Singh, Wang, all of them are testifying against him. All of them have pleaded guilty. Then, as if that wasn't enough, there's Sam's own words, including tweets he tried to delete, as well as his congressional testimony. So I'm not an attorney, don't pretend to be, but all of this should make for terribly interesting work by Cohen, his attorney, his defense attorney. So
But
Cohen is
everything about finance and how money works and how his math didn't math.
I will never say I know everything because I really don't. Long ways from it, but I've had my face kicked in a few times. But I was kind of curious as to how Cohen would defend this guy, because it seems to me from, what we know, it's pretty much a slam dunk case. Well, Cohen kind of started laying his cards on the table this week. He appears to be trying to blame the crypto markets, which are known for their volatility, and talking about a perfect storm. Damn good movie, but a perfect storm as loans to Alameda were recalled by lenders. And he also tries to blame, guess who?
His ex.
His ex. So this is going to be kind of a fascinating trial. I think it just has all the groundwork. I don't know if it's going to be a Depp v. Heard, but
Hey,
it's
Clay,
definitely taking an interesting spin.
it's all Tallulah's fault.
It's all Tallulah's fault.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of the mighty Tallulah, got to give credit where credit is due.
Yes. I had asked Zan to, or Zan's tired, or Toots, whichever, etc., to create like a little portrait of the babies. And so this is what she did with Tallulah. This is Tallulah. It says, "Pick me up, mama," because that's what she always wants. How cute is that? She drew that by, on her own, on her. It took her like 2 or 3 weeks. She's going to do chunk as well. But bless her, she's so talented.
Yeah, just seeing Tallulah up there reminded me of the pic, and had to give her credit. That is just very cute. The computer doesn't do it justice.
Yeah, and that's not the pic I sent her that looked very little like that. I mean, it's changed quite a bit, but she did that all on her own, just looking at a picture. So I love her. I mean, she did a great job.
And you probably can't see it, but right here, he even captured the little white hair that grows out of the middle of Tallulah's nose. And I'm like, that's kind of impressive attention to detail. So,
oh yeah, it's I can't wait to see Chunks.
Yeah, it is a very, very good rendition.
She is very talented.
Did I say rendition? Is that fair?
Rendition, yes.
So back to Cohen talking about his perfect storm. He was talking about the volatility in the crypto markets. He was talking about how loans to Alameda were recalled by lenders for some unknown mysterious reason. He kind of failed to mention the excessive margin Alameda took out during the crypto collapse, which, frightened off some of the other exchanges and lenders. Cohen's tried to paint Caroline as, can I say, man behind the curtain?
I mean,
did seriously? I assume her gender?
No, I'm just his parents. Go ahead. Well, tax attorney who teach at Stanford.
Parents haven't even been brought up yet.
Oh, good Lord. I can't
or at least in Cohen's opening arguments. He, blaming Carolyn, 24 years old at the time, had no experience, no idea, and he's painting her as the grand scheme master of the colossal failure. Which is, did
she ever even study finance or the economy, or
what was her degree in? Let me see.
I would give a comment, but I'm probably going to offend some people, so I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, you never do that.
I offend people.
Her education, alma mater, Stanford. Criminal status, pleaded guilty. What was her degree in? Education. Bachelor's degree in math.
Ah. So she knows how the maths. Oh, hey, Airsick, how you doing?
Prosecution doing a nice job of keeping it simple. Defense will try to argue that the jury is too stupid to understand this because it's so complex. Well, there's some clues in the opening arguments here, and I think you'll find this kind of interesting.
That is fair.
Yeah. Cohen tries to paint Caroline as like I say, kind of the man behind the curtain. And he argues that Sam advised her to hedge Alameda's bets. All of this while he was stealing customer funds, but I digress. And Cohen repeatedly states that Sam, SBF, did not intend to hurt anyone. Sam didn't intend to hurt anyone while he was stealing their money. So, like, I got a question.
I
Is
got a
he
question.
arguing that Sam is schizophrenic and has no social conscience? Or is he saying Sam stole from people for the greater good of the people? Which of the two?
Clay, there's a saying: the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah. I'm like, is he really arguing that Sam didn't intend to hurt anyone as a legal defense? I'm like, that ultimately doesn't sound like, I'm not an attorney, but it doesn't sound like to me that would work out necessarily to the benefit of your client oftentimes.
You're good, Airsick. We're glad to have you here for as long as you can be here, and we love seeing you.
Yeah, we appreciate you dropping in.
Mm-hmm. You mean like and by the way, Clay, you mean like the entire Ontario Teachers Fund that was
Well, we'll get to that.
totally wiped out?
I thought it interesting. Cohen also admitted that Alameda had certain privileges, as he described it, but he left out the fact that Singh put the computer guy put those privileges in the computer system at Sam's request. That the privileges included the ability to raid client funds from the other business. Alameda could borrow or take unlimited monies from FTX clients, as well as the ability not to have margin calls on borrowed money as the equity value of the collateralized assets fell, which is kind of a fancy way of saying that Alameda would borrow money from FTX, use it to invest.
But I thought Alameda was the biggest.
Hold on, let me explain this. Hold your horses.
I know too much and have too many questions.
When I start explaining something, I need to kill Ellen's mic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kidding. But Alameda borrows money, and then it uses this borrowed money with some money of its own, its equity, to buy or establish a position. Well, as the price of that purchased asset drops, that comes out of equity. So it's like your house. You put it up as collateral. And then in the market, when that house value starts dropping, the bank can say, that's not enough collateral. You need to put more cash in your account to keep the level of collateral the same as when we set up the loan. Does that make sense?
No, because it's not the same as a mortgage, right?
Well, no, I'm using that as a hypothetical. You borrow money from a bank to buy a house.
Let's say
and the bank says
mortgage,
you
I
have
don't
to
think
maintain equity.
I don't think a mortgage is the best scenario there
Yeah,
because
it is. It's fine.
okay.
Just cool your jets.
I'm trying.
Let's say you borrow 60% of a house price,
Mm-hmm.
and you put up 40% equity,
Mm-hmm.
and the bank says you have to maintain that 40%.
Mm-hmm.
So as the house value drops, it doesn't reduce the size of the loan; it comes out of your equity. Does that make sense?
Okay. So you put 40,000 in.
You put 40,000 in, you borrow 60. House is $100,000.
So you have to keep 40,000 in the bank?
Yes.
Why?
But as that house value drops from 100 to 90,000, that $10,000 loss comes out of your equity. So now
because you sign a personal agreement to pay that loan, but it's not the same as commercial.
Ellen. Gotta love her. So that 10,000 comes out of your 40 equity. You now have 30 in equity. Well, your equity to the housing price, 90,000, has dropped. That percentage has dropped.
No, wait. Back up.
Okay, never mind.
No, if you put 40,000 into it as cash, right? You owe 60. Why do you have to keep anything in the bank?
Because that was requirement, because the bank is saying we're never going to lose money on this loan.
A air
So
sick,
you have
thank
to
you.
maintain
Equity isn't
equity.
cash, it's value.
In stocks, it's cash. Equity is cash.
Okay, Clay,
In financial markets, it's cash.
you're talking mortgage.
I was using that as an example because most people understand borrowing money on a house. So I was using
Yes,
it as an example,
but that's
as an
not how it
analogy,
works.
as an analogy.
It's not how it works.
I was using it as an analogy. Have you ever heard of an analogy?
Yes, I have, but it's not an equal analogy.
Okay, now I can talk. There is no perfect analogy when trying to explain margin. So I have to come up with something.
We'll come up with
So it's
something
an,
that is actually equal to what you're talking about and not something that people are going to get so confused about their mortgages. They're going to freak out. Keep it simple.
like I said, let's just pass on that.
It can be, yes, it can be cash.
Yes, in stocks, it has to be, cash in the account. They won't
That's just
take
like a call.
they won't take other collateral. No, calls are never mind.
Okay.
So
But to help you,
basically, Alameda didn't have to cover losses that regular investors would. How's that?
yes. Okay.
That was one of their privileges. So they had the ability to rob customer accounts from FTX when cash was needed or wanted. I mean, seriously, who could see a problem with that? There's no intent to hurt anyone embedded in stealing their money. Obviously, it was done for perfectly altruistic reasons. And interestingly, and I thought this was a money take, the judge in instructing the jury before the trial began, his opening statement was, his comment to them was, the opening statements are like a trailer from a movie. Sometimes it doesn't turn out that way. And I thought that was a rather astute comparison, actually. So opening arguments began, and Wren, the prosecutor, detailed his case when he said the defendant wanted money he didn't have. He committed fraud. There's no comment there on, whether or not he intended to hurt anybody or not. He just stole their money. And, some examples, Sam bought a $16 million apartment for his family to stay at when they would visit him before he bought them a house down there. And he used FTX funds to buy a $30 million penthouse for himself. And keep in mind, he didn't take salary. He just, quote unquote, took loans. Not only did he take loans, he took them without signing any loan documents or papers. He just took the money. Wren presented one of Sam's own tweets, and it read, quote, FTX has a long history of safeguarding assets, and that remains true to this day. So that kind of begs the question. I guess that depends on what the meaning of safeguard is. Wren then goes to point out that Sam appointed his girlfriend Caroline as CEO of Alameda to run it, even though she was like 24, had zero experience running a hedge fund. Wren points out that even at the beginning, Alameda had secret access to FTX customers' money. So from the very beginning, this wasn't a late stage addition or a recent addition. This was from the very get-go. It's the way the whole system was designed. He pointed out that many of the clients that wanted to invest money in FTX, Sam would meet people at some of these, various celebrity meetings in DC or LA, and he would throw his effective altruism pitch, and, people wanted to invest or put money with FTX, invest through FTX. Well, Sam opened a bank account under the control of Alameda and instructed customers to send their money there. So he told them they would invest in FTX. They sent him the money, but he used an account that wasn't FTX. What's the intent there? Seriously, what's the plan there? Does that sound like, a naive little accident? FTX's website said customers' money was in their accounts. Often, though, it was actually in Sam's accounts or already spent. Remember, $8 billion in customer funds was missing when it finally went under. And, keep in mind, all this got started when Sam and the gang were setting up roots in South Korea, taking advantage, exploiting the kimchi premium in Bitcoin. Basically, South Korea had some restrictive regulations that made it hard to buy Bitcoin. So Sam would buy Bitcoin on the American market and then turn around and sell it for cash in South Korea at a higher price, much higher price. This was the kimchi premium. They took the cash. They had dozens of bank accounts, dozens of banks that they used to process the money, process the cash. It's not a complex trade. It's not a sophisticated trade. You buy an asset for a lower price in one market, sell it in another where trade is legally restricted for a higher price, and do it in cash so no authority knows what you're doing. Sounds perfectly legit to me. So from the very get-go, their whole operation, their whole process was deceitful, was shady at best. I mean, when you're generating so much cash and you have dozens and dozens of banks that you deposit that cash at so it won't draw attention from the regulators. I mean, is that money laundering or not? Well, Wren talks about also Sam buying political influence. He was the second largest donor to the Democratic Party in the 2022 elections. He was one of the biggest donors to Biden in the 2020 election. And he charmed them all, earning their support. Now, also, there were other people in FTX that donated to Republicans. So I'm not just singling out Democrats here. But we're talking about Sam, and his donations were strictly one way. He points out that Sam testified to Congress that FTX was not using customer money when FTX was using customer money. Again, no intent to hurt anyone proven. He just didn't want anyone knowing what he was doing, being a private guy and all. What's the intent with that? But wait, it gets even better. He points out how the execs at FTX used a message app that burned the text after receipt and was highly encrypted so that there was no paper trail of what they were doing. They used an app called Signal, which allows you to send an encoded text message to someone else who has Signal that is extremely difficult to unencrypt. The NSA can do it, but they have to use a supercomputer, and it probably takes a day or two to unencrypt. So it's a fair amount of effort to unencrypt. Not only that, it doesn't keep a record of the transmission. After you read it, you can set it so that it deletes the message, securely deletes the message after some period of time, an hour, a day, whatever. So there was no trail of their communications this whole time. No intent? why all the concern with not having a paper trail? I mean, if I'm a juror, this is kind of like my perspective. Now, Cohen, who also represented Ghislaine Maxwell, has his turn. All of this was from the prosecuting, and tells jurors he's going to present a very different story, which this dude keeps his word. It is a very different story. Emphasis on story. He starts off with saying Sam didn't attempt to defraud anyone. There was no theft. He sincerely argued that the money was taken as a loan. I kid you not. So Sam basically borrowed $8 billion from customers, but he had every intent of paying it back, even though he didn't take a dime in salary. Also, there was no paperwork of these loans, quote unquote loans. So how did Sam know who he owed? Interesting argument to me from Cohen. He argues also that FTX and Alameda were entirely separate entities with his words, strict barriers between them, that Alameda didn't receive any special treatment from FTX. And then Cohen argues that crypto is not for everyone. I'm just curious, after hearing this, does it make you want to go out and buy some? I mean, considering the consistency of his arguments, if he's arguing that crypto is volatile, you shouldn't invest in it. Do you follow me? I'm like, that's the best recommendation for crypto I've seen in a year. Now, I love Cohen's, descriptive ability. He describes Wren's portrayal of Sam as a cartoon of a villain. Cartoon of a villain. Okay, I'll give him points for that. There's some style there. Cohen points out that Sam was a grad of MIT and worked hard.
Sorry.
We have the bull in the china shop here.
Your son.
No.
Yes.
Now, Cohen argues FTX offered margin loans to customers. He neglects to mention it didn't waive margin calls or requirements for them the same way it did for Alameda. So when the value of their asset dropped, they had to cough up more cash, which Alameda didn't. He points out, and this was interesting to me, he points out that in early 23, FTX was worth about $32 billion, though he doesn't mention the value 6 months later. This kind of struck me weird, is everybody knew what happened 6 months later. Everybody knew what the value was 6 months later. Good, solid companies, honest companies, don't go from 32 billion to zero in 6 months with $8 billion in client losses, unaccounted for, I should say. So I'm sitting here wondering if jurors are thinking that, and I think it would be obvious that they would think that, is he trying to get his client convicted? I mean, seriously, some of his arguments to me seem almost counterintuitive. Now, Cohen, belabors the point that Sam was an honest guy. He reasonably believed that there were no laws or terms of service preventing the loaning out of customer funds. So in other words, Cohen's arguing that, hey, Sam took out billions and billions in loans with no paperwork, no notation whatsoever. And it's cool. There's really no law against it. I'm like, what? What the hell? I mean, that's almost intuitive. And this kid, Cohen argued earlier that he's supposed to be an MIT brainiac. running an investment firm, known for safeguarding customer funds. Again, it's almost to me a counterintuitive argument.
And the fact that he trusted Caroline to run Alameda is just insane. Like, she was 24 years old. I get she was like a math major, whatever, but seriously?
Yeah, and see, with the communication encoded using Signal, I'm not even sure he can make a decent argument that she ran it, because they were most likely in constant contact. You can't necessarily prove it, but there's a lot of doubt as to whether or not she was running it. In her own testimony, I think she'll probably say she was overwhelmed and just withdrew.
I agree. I think that he just was like, I got to do this thing with crypto. So you got to just stay here and make sure things like go well or something. I don't know. And she was seriously overwhelmed and had no idea what she was doing.
Yeah, now her testimony will come up next week, so we'll see exactly what she says. But there's evidence from her earlier comments that will kind of be the tack she takes. And I mean, she was hired at age 24 with zero experience. If he did not hire her for her experience in running a hedge fund, just what reasons did he hire her for?
Her girlfriend. It was his girlfriend. That's it.
I mean, seriously. I would like to see that question asked. As far as I know, it's never been asked nor answered. But I'd seriously like to see it asked and answered. Now, Sam was always majority owner in Alameda and FTX.
Doesn't that make you like responsible for everything that goes on?
You would think so. But Sam's claims that he was rarely involved.
Well,
so it's going to be,
no
it's going to be his word against Caroline's, because there's no real paperwork. Obviously, everything was burned in the text. Let's see here. Hey, Airsick. I think she's like all kids of her generation. Watched a few TikToks and qualified.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. That was probably her best qualification, actually. She should have watched a few more TikToks, or maybe gone over to Instagram even.
Or just did some studying. I mean, I know she was a math major, but still, like, math and finance are not the same.
Yeah. Again, you've got, why were they only communicating using Signal? Right? What was the intent there? But in terms of the finance and structure, Sam and Cohen blamed Caroline for not hedging. And he even said that Sam told her to hedge. I mean, well, first of all, it's like she has zero experience. She doesn't know how the hell to hedge. Secondly, no one in the industry, no one in the business, no trader, no investor shorted FTX. Not one. You know why? Because you can't. You cannot do a direct short of an unregistered token. It's not a hypothecable security. And hypothecable is a fancy word that means you can take the stock to a bank and get a loan.
It's not a stock.
It's not a stock. For example, if I went to a bank with 1 million shares of Apple, they'll give me $1 million loan. But if I went to a bank with 1 billion shares of Moffett Wonderful Enterprises, Inc., they're probably not going to give me $1 million loan based on that collateral. It's not hypothecable. The hypothetical securities are generally the New York Stock Exchange, American Exchange type stocks. Well-known, international, national companies. Now, to short FTX, which is how you would hedge, some form of a short, there were a few options. One, you could maybe talk a small broker into holding a short position. And a short position, a long position is when you buy an asset expecting the price to go up. So you buy it low, you sell it high, right? A short position is still buy it low, sell it high, but you reverse the order. You sell it high, expecting the price to drop, and then you buy it to deliver to the customer who bought it. That's a Cliff Notes version of a short.
That okay, you got a short is you're betting on it's going to go down.
It's not a bet. You
Well,
are
you're-
taking a position
Yeah.
that the price is going down. So you can make money if stocks go up. You can make money if stocks go down. You make money if stocks go up being long, owning the stock. You make money if stocks go down by being short.
I'm talking about like the Big Short.
Yeah.
They made money off of
'Cause-
betting that the value would go down.
Yeah, I hesitate on
the
using the word
bets, I
betting
know
because it's not a probability function, but yeah, they took positions believing that the assets were overpriced and they would be able to buy them later at a cheaper price.
Is there a way that you can like do that for the whole stock market?
Yeah.
Now?
Yeah.
Well, why wouldn't anyone just do that now? Because
Whole different question.
Okay.
Let's stay on topic.
Trying to help you guys out. I think she's like all kids are. Oh, no, where is
Yeah.
that? I thought it was new. Sorry. I apologize. I was wrong.
So, shorting, Caroline possibly could have talked some small brokers into holding the short position, but the risk of failure of that is extremely high because small brokers go out of business easily, particularly if they start having losses. One of the larger brokers was Genesis, and it had to shutter its whole crypto operation before FTX fell. Another way to short would be to use a larger exchange like Binance. Now, I've talked about Binance a little bit. I think it's pretty much a corrupt deal. So not a fan of Binance, but their larger exchange could have approached Binance about holding a short position or finding someone to take the other side. Probably the best way. Well, Binance, if you went through Binance and they found somebody to take the other side, that would probably be a very, very expensive solution.
Why's that?
Because doing a custom short, people know nobody wants that. So they would charge through the roof to do it.
Okay.
Supply and demand, basically. There's no supply. So whoever does it can charge whatever they want.
Okay. Fair enough.
So Brentwood, I'll catch the rest on replay. I'm going to sound so smart to dinner night. Thanks to y'all. Have a great night. Brentwood, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hope you have a great night.
Enjoy your dinner.
Probably the best way to short a crypto exchange like FTX would be to use something called a perpetual future.
Never heard of that.
A future is just an agreement to do a deal in the future at a price agreed upon today. And it has a specific maturity. A perpetual future wouldn't have that maturity or would have a very short maturity that you could have the option to continue rolling it. Again, it would be risky. And there probably would be some additional cost associated with it. They can get very expensive quickly. And there's always the risk the exchange goes under and all of your funds. Remember, you have to put up margin. You have to put up cash to guarantee your position. So all of that could vaporize if the exchange went defunct.
So how does that work when you borrow money or you put up a percentage of a stock?
Well, it's like if you had a deposit at a bank. I'm using an analogy. If you put a deposit at a bank and the bank goes bankrupt.
Mm-hmm. FDIC would cover it.
Well, in this case, there's no FDIC.
Well, I'm just saying that's a bad analogy. Then what? What you
We
gonna
have
do?
an opening on Mopping on Money for a co-host.
Oh, come on.
But that would be the risk, and that's a big risk. So there is, bottom line, Sam saying he told Caroline to hedge. Practical reality, there's no way to hedge. There's no practical way to hedge. Long story short. So either Sam is clueless or lying, and his attorney is either clueless or lying. So he's telling the court that he told her to do something that she couldn't possibly do, and that if he had a modicum of knowledge, that he would know that. If he had been in the markets for any length of time, he would know that. So it's just hokey. It is a hokey excuse that hopefully the prosecution will blow apart.
He's been bad.
Cohen also argues that Sam acted in good faith, which is amazing to me. He took, his words, reasonable business measures. And he blames Caroline repeatedly and says the same thing over and over and over.
Like a really horrible ex. It's all her fault. She did all the things. It's all her fault.
Yeah. Now, Cohen argues that, goes on to argue that Binance put a tweet out attacking, quote unquote, attacking FTX. So he's basically arguing that a single tweet can destroy a $30 billion company. But I digress. The reality is that Binance exited from FTX's equity when they saw irregularities. And who can blame them? This is the actual tweet that Cohen references. It's by CZ, who's the CEO of Binance. And he says, as part of Binance's exit from FTX equity last year, Binance received roughly $2.1 billion in U.S. equivalent in cash. Due to recent revelations that have come to light, we have a decision to liquidate any remaining FTT on our books.
The FTT was the actual Bitcoin.
Yeah, it was the token of FTX. It was their equity. It was their interest in FTX. And he says we will try to do so in a way that minimizes market impact. Due to market conditions and limited liquidity, we expect this will take a few months to complete. Binance always encourages collaboration between industry players regarding speculations whether or not this is a move against a competitor. It is not. So there's nothing in this tweet that is attacking FTX. Nothing. Not a single word.
Sorry.
They just say, we decided to liquidate our remaining position due to some of the recent revelations, information that everybody had.
And I think that's fair for a company to do and just say, you know what?
Yeah. And they were disclosing it ahead of their liquidation. It's not like they sold out everything and then told everybody, hey, y'all need to get out of FTX. They did it. And I'll give them credit. They announced it before they did it.
Yeah. He said every time a project publicly fails, it hurts every user and every platform, including them.
Now, Cohen's getting near the end of his opening statement here. All this is his opening statement. And he ended by saying it's, quote, it's not a crime to run a company that ends up going through a storm. It's not a crime to run a company that ends up going through a storm. Yep. Personally, I didn't know Sam was charged with storm running or whatever is illegal about being in a storm. I didn't know the prosecution had mentioned or, that was any of the 7 charges against him. Cohen then goes on to argue that this case turns, and this is an astute comment here, this case turns on the testimony of the witnesses. Amazing. This case turns on the testimony of the witnesses. Does he actually get paid to say that kind of stuff? Atticus, did you catch the testimony about Alameda having a 5-second time gap advantage for trading built into their system? In trading terms, 5 seconds is light years as an advantage.
It is.
Yeah.
It's crazy advantage. 5 seconds is like 100 years in
Yeah.
the normal time.
Yeah, I have not mentioned that yet, but we talked about it several months ago or a while back when we talked about SBF and FTX collapsing. But that's a good point. I have not mentioned it tonight.
And that was in November of last year.
Yeah.
So if you want to check that one out, it's the first SBF FTX video.
Yeah.
The one that Low and Lumber said, watch this if you want to know what's going on.
So, but that's a good point. Hadn't brought it up tonight. But just, I'm like going through Cohen's opening statement and I'm wondering, is he trying to get his client off or is he trying to get him convicted? I don't know. So it was a couple of fascinating opening statements to me. Now, the trial's just getting started. Wang testified a little bit yesterday, Friday, and will continue next week. And then Caroline will take the stand. And a brief note on the jury. I thought this was interesting. The jury includes a retired Salomon Brothers investment banker.
Oof.
Which, are y'all familiar with Michael Lewis?
Yes.
The author of The Big Short, Liar's Poker,
yep.
Moneyball, The Blind Side, has several good books out there. Well, he came out last week in an interview and he was actually saying Sam was a good guy, could have done great things. And, I commented on this in, I think, Tuesday night. Or was it a short?
Short. He was a very smart guy who could have done great things, but he got wrapped up in all of the BS, in my opinion.
He was a smart guy who could have done great things if he wasn't a liar, pretentious fraud.
Cheat, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, seriously. And as far as shorts, if y'all get a chance, go watch, a couple of the shorts. I think we have been reported for malicious content. And so we aren't getting the attention or advertising that we normally would, which we were kind of growing there for a while, but things have been throttled back. So if y'all get a chance, get bored, go hit, some of those shorts or some of the other videos. But the jury has the retired Salomon Brothers investment banker, which, if he knows, Michael Lewis is from Salomon Brothers. The book Liar's Poker is about his time at Salomon. So I wonder if that would bias his opinion, just throwing that out. There's also a pediatric nurse, special ed teacher. Basically, it's 9 women and 3 men. So an interesting composition of the jury. Atticus K., do you have a point of view on how Michael Lewis ended up with the story that he did in his book? His story seems to be a different one than the one we've been watching so long with SBF. Confused. You're not the only one. I got to admit, I'm confused too. I'm like, what the hell have you been watching, Lewis? I mean, unless John Ray, the executor of the SBF bankruptcy, unless he's a total liar, unless some of the things we know occurred were just complete fabrications in the media and by the SEC and by, CZ, Binance, some others. There's just too much out there that points to what SBF was actually doing and why. Even his own words, his own testimony. So I'm confused as to what the hell Lewis is thinking. I really don't know. But it does seem like from his comments that he met with a completely different guy than what we have seen and heard through the
Can I give my opinion?
Yeah, FTX saga, certainly.
I think that anyone who writes a story has a way they want to define it, a perceived notion of how it's going to go. And maybe they just influence the details in some way with their literary, whatever it's called, influence to make things maybe different than what they actually are. Creative license, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, Lewis has some very entertaining books, and with the take that he's got on Sam and FTX, he talks about FTX could have been a great company and changed the industry. Again,
story.
if it hadn't been a complete fraud, yeah, maybe so. It does make a better story. And, it kind of makes me wonder about his telling of prior events in his other books. I just don't know. I'm confused. I'm with you. Don't have a good explanation, but I will agree. His story seems to be vastly different than the one we've been watching for the past year.
And I wouldn't trust anyone who has any sort of financial gain from this. I would not trust their stories, period.
And the weird, I don't know.
Because
I was going to say,
he read a book. I mean, let's not trust what he's saying.
Yeah, most people, I think hold the position that FTX was a fraud and Sam is a fraud. But maybe an argument could be made that if Lewis creates more controversy, he'll sell more copies. I don't know. Seems like he's already sold a ton of books. He should be fairly well secure. He certainly can write in an engaging style. He's a good writer. Mm-hmm. But his comments this past week have just left me bumfoozled.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this is just the weirdest thing, but Tallulah gets real comfortable and expresses random glands on me. So now I smell like that, and I'm gonna go change clothes. I'm sorry.
I agree.
Thank you.
Sitting here getting a whiff.
Thanks.
Anybody want a Morky?
No. You can have a black one. Come
on. Never a dull moment here at Moffat on Money. I don't know exactly what to say after that, honestly. But all right, what are your thoughts on Sam and the opening statements? Is he just the victim of a perfect storm? Was Cohen right about, he was good intentioned and Caroline was the one who, committed I don't know. He never says Caroline necessarily committed the fraud, but he kind of implies it. I don't know. There's it. Adderall. More Adderall, please. Just wait till you hear those physical disabilities impacted his decision making. I can't wait. This is, if the tack the defense takes, I don't know that I've ever heard or seen that before, but it'll be fascinating. I can't imagine the attention that will get. This case just, with the two exes lining up against each other, with the amount of money involved, with the utter ineptness. I mean, it's almost like a soap opera, the way the executives conducted themselves in the, penthouse and at the office, using QuickBooks to manage a $30 billion corporation. It's stranger than fiction. And I think that's what makes this case and these personalities so damn interesting. It's got political intrigue. It's got massive financial fraud. it's rich. It is rich. Look forward to the trial continuing. So, any other questions, comments? Sky Ricky. The lawyer will just tell stories to confuse the jury and put the prosecution will not let him get away with that. Let me ask you, the from what I was recounting for you here earlier, do you think that confuses the jury? I don't know if it confuses them or just encourages them to think, yeah, this is just a schmuck running a fraud. I don't know. There were things in the opening statements that I thought were harmful. If I was a juror, that would make me think and consider things that were ultimately harmful to his defense.
And Sky Ricky is the girlfriend in jail? No, she actually had a plea deal along with Wang
and Singh. The parents, so far, the parents haven't been mentioned. I mean, to me, that's interesting because Sam got the idea from somewhere that instead of taking salary, you take money out as loans. You don't have to pay taxes on it. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised the IRS hasn't jumped in this. Of course, yeah, Sam's still an American citizen.
Yeah.
So
he was in the Bahamas. He wasn't.
Yeah, but I don't know if that was his
he was born
legal residence or what.
Born here, he's an American citizen.
Yeah, I just don't know why the IRS hasn't jumped in on this yet, because there's a ton of financial issues and tax implications, tax issues that nobody's even started to address yet.
Do I smell better?
You don't smell like anal glands. So yes, that's making progress here.
I do have my children are not for sale. Just to make a statement before we don't put that on. But yeah, that was awful. That was stinky.
Like I say, never a dull moment here. Puppet Masters, parents, yes. Mm-hmm. That's truly what I believe.
Yeah, they tried to help him get away with it. That was just the worst thing ever. Like, let's help our son get away with this and still make money off of him, which was, as a parent, you're supposed to protect your children. You're supposed to guide them to do the right thing. And yeah, that did not happen.
Yeah, like I say, who's protecting the parents? Why hasn't, their income, and because they were receiving gifts.
Stanford.
Did they not know that their son was taking loans, unreported loans, unsecured loans with no notes from FTX and using it to buy them a house?
Of course they knew. And they took the money from them.
Yeah. And then the root was political contribution. They were buying tons of influence in and around DC and California among the celebrities, et cetera, et cetera. And influence friends matter.
I would like to know whose taxes they were doing. That may make a difference.
What do you mean?
If they were doing celebrities' taxes.
Oh, I don't know. I have not heard. There just hasn't been really any investigative journalism on the parents, on their role, on their activities.
That's kind of my point.
Really, all we know about them is that they are Stanford law professors who specialize in tax, interestingly enough. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, there's questions here. There's a lot of questions here. Let's get some answers. And I don't even see much curiosity out of the legal system. which I don't know if it's just laying in wait. It's trying to build a case. Obviously, I'm not privy to a lot of information, but there seems to me that this is a case that could very easily expand in multiple directions. And it's been a year. Sam's trial's already ongoing. So, maybe they're waiting to see what evidence is presented, what testimony is given in the trial that they can take advantage of.
How many layers do you think there are to this?
A bunch.
As far as just the company itself and government and the IRS, and how many, and then crypto, like how many layers are there?
You just don't have a well-intentioned nice guy going from zero to running a $30 billion corporation without there being a fair amount of layers. There's a lot of relationships there. Sequoia, BlackRock. How the hell do they invest hundreds of millions of dollars without doing any due diligence? These are unregistered securities. They have a fiduciary responsibility to their investors. I haven't looked at their prospectuses, but I would be, for their mutual funds, I'd have to look at which ones actually invested in FTX. But I'd be very surprised if they could invest sizable amounts in unregistered securities, which FTX and crypto are.
I mean, excuse me. Well, I've got a dog scratching at my door, so I'm trying to curtail that. I just think it's odd that they were able to do what they did for so long and drain it dry. And he took $1 billion loan out of the company.
Will you go kill that dog?
No, I'm not going to kill the dog.
All right, throw it away.
No.
Whatever.
I am just stopping.
No, that's not doing any good.
To keep them from...
Go tell them no. They're going to scratch the door.
They haven't yet. They're fine. With political contribution, yeah, true. You may have gotten that already. I didn't see it.
Yep.
Yeah, I just think it's really tragic that I'm going to say something I'm going to regret, so I shouldn't say it. That's
all right. Any other questions, comments? We are getting near the 9 o'clock hour.
Immigration and housing, Clay.
Maybe next time.
This is the second time you put it off.
I know. But it was by popular demand.
I know.
The vote was for SBF.
I know.
So.
All right. Too many people. Not enough housing.
In a nutshell. That's it.
Stop letting them in. Protect the border.
Well, it's a little more to it than that. But
SBF, Jimmy Skeletons. No one wants to let those out. Yeah, and who will paint the door? I will paint the door. Sky Reiki. Who do you think will paint it? Actually, we both painted it this past fall. But their claws aren't long enough to make any difference. He's just irritated by the noise.
Don't kill the dogs. I have threatened to kill them probably 1,000 times over the past few years.
He tries to give them away every single day over 4 years. It is important stuff. This will end with SBF. Yeah. And airsick, yes, it is important. And we're going to keep covering it and keep giving our opinions. Whether y'all like them or not, I don't know. That's just what we do.
Well, we'll give you the actual facts, and then we'll throw in the opinions on the side for, whatever they're worth. You get what you pay for. But like you say, this is important stuff because this isn't just an isolated event. The problems, the issues here go deeper. We don't know how deep, how far, whatever. But it's, Bernie Madoff was representative of a systemic issue. Sam, to me, also is representative of a systemic issue. Complete failure of investigative agencies, of investors, of making informed consent, fiduciaries investing money with zero due diligence, of numerous tax issues. I guess Clay really loves Ellen, and he really loves the dogs.
Clay. He does love me, and he does love the dogs. He just likes to be a turd about it.
I don't have I've always liked big, ugly dogs that I could get up and tackle in the morning.
Okay. When we get Thor again, we will make y'all
a Thor video.
Yes, absolutely. With Talou and Chunk, because he plays very well with them, and he's probably 150 pounds.
160-ish, yeah.
And he can get on top of the refrigerator to get treats.
Yeah.
He's a whole nother level. Clay rescued him. He's gone to another family, but we'll get into that. But he does love me.
I do. And the dogs are lovable. I just am not a high maintenance kind of person.
That's too bad.
And when I'm sitting here during the broadcast and I've got dogs just scratching endlessly at the door, I admit it's a little irritating. She doesn't care. It's a little irritating to me.
On something else.
Yeah, it's a little irritating. So, but they are sweet dogs. They really are. They are gentle spirits. They are just constantly want to be with you in your lap, get attention all the time, be petted all the time, play ball all the time. It's just never stops. And I'm like, sometimes I need a little peace and quiet so that I can get work done. So,
well, you do, and that's when you send them both up to my room to wake me up at 7 a.m.
and then
make sure that.
And then you come back down with them.
Well, because you sent them up to me, and therefore I'm awake.
But we thank y'all for being here. We thank y'all for being here.
Yes, we do. We love all of you, and we hope that this family is one that you can come to for anything. We're always here for you. MoffatOnMoney@gmail.com. Always, if you need anything, reach out to us, and we'll do whatever we can to help.
And just really grateful for your time. Grateful for your support and your encouragement. Sky Ricky, we don't mind. We all have pets that require attention. But is it endless attention?
Clay is getting used to us all needing attention.
No, he's not getting used to it.
He's not.
He is not getting used to it. It's just not in my nature.
Yeah.
I've gotten to the point where I would be perfectly content up in the mountains watching the sunrise, smoking a cigar, nursing a scotch, and
all by his little self for the rest of his life.
Yep. Thank y'all. Appreciate it, Sky Ricky.
But he wouldn't be happy, and he doesn't.
And let us all sincerely, pray for peace or whatever. These are troubling times. There's a lot of people hurting, a lot of people suffering, and the trends just are a little concerning to me.
It's not going to get any better, by the way, anytime soon. I don't believe you, Clay. Thank you, Sky Ricky. I think you're right. I don't believe him either.
With that,
he's like, go away, y'all.
Our time is up. We do thank you for yours. Y'all have a great night. Blessings to you all.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.